Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about the new Warner Brothers film opening tomorrow, Thursday, October 21st at 6 p.m. both in theaters and on HBO Max, entitled Dune. I figured I'd get this one out to you guys ahead of time so that way you could do what this channel is meant to do, which is watch this video and decide if this is a movie that's worth your time or not. You know, it's one of those things that you don't really know how this is going to resonate with different types of moviegoers, so I want to give you guys an idea of what I think about this film, what this film is like, what it's like to experience, and then you can decide if it's something you want to check out. It's 2.5 hours long, so it's no easy. It's not a short, quick, easy sit through. You know, you're gonna be in the theater for 3 hours or so. So I want to make sure, if you go to the theater, I want to make sure that I let you guys know what I think about this movie. And I'm gonna start by saying that I think this movie's fucking incredible. I absolutely love this movie. Now, like I always do when I review stuff on this channel for things that you guys may not have watched yet, so like these kind of like non-spoiler reviews, all I really do is tell you what I like about the film, why I like it, what resonates with me for the film or the television show, and then you can go from there. Like, this isn't me saying this is good or this is bad. One thing I always want to do is tell you, well, I do that sometimes, but I want to let you guys know so that what I think and the nature of a film, so that way you can decide if it's for you or not. And these kind of like hard sci-fi fantasy films are not for everyone. So that's what I want to do here. And I'm going to talk about this film. I'm going to talk about some of the stuff I liked. I'm going to talk about a couple of the issues I had with it. And you can decide if it's something that's for you or not. So let's get started. This film is fucking massive in scope. It's massive in pretty much every way you could interpret that word. Both in like budget, in visuals, cast. Like, it's so grandiose. And the film has an incredible cast. We're talking Timothee Chalamet, we're talking Zendaya, Josh Brolin, Jason Momoa, Javier Bardem. Like it's stacked. This cast is stacked. One of the things though that I think could cause people problems with this film is that I don't want to say it's paced slow, but it feels slow because it spends a lot of time letting you get accustomed to the world that this film exists in. So what I mean by that is, a lot of time when you have a new sci-fi film or a new sci-fi property, they kind of gotta explain to you what this world is like. It's usually something way in the future that's wildly different from the way our world is now. This film spends a lot of time getting you acclimated to everything that's going on in this world, and just the nature of like the culture and the customs and how people deal with it. So in order to kind of help get you guys like a little bit of a primer going in, just real super quick, I'm going to read this like little quick summary that I wrote of kind of like the very basic plot premise. So that way, if you watch this before you watch the movie, you can at least have an idea of what the premise is, so your brain doesn't have to wrap around that aspect of it, and you could spend your time kind of like focusing on the cultural aspect. So like, think of this as like Game of Thrones, but on like a galactic scale, right? Game of Thrones, you have your Iron Throne, you have your King of the Seven Kingdoms, and then you have the various houses, you know, House Stark, House Lannister. This is kind of the same, except that think of the Iron Throne and the King of the Seven Kingdoms as like this in the film universe is like a galactic emperor. And then I'm sure there are multiple houses slash planets or whatever that make up this universe, but the film only focuses on two: House Harkonnen and House Atreides. House Atreides, they stay on a planet called I think it's Caladan, yeah, and it's a primarily ocean planet. You know what? I just remember when I talked about House Atreides, I left out Oscar Isaac, one of the most important parts. I watch pretty much anything Oscar Isaac is in at this point. Anyway, they reside on Caladan, and House Harkonnen currently resides on Arrakis. Arrakis is a sand planet, and they manufacture this spice. I'm not going to tell you anything about spice. Just know it's not fucking like nutmeg, some shit like that. It's something that has a whole lot of uses that I'll save for the film to explain these things to you. But I'll suffice it to say, spice is incredibly fucking valuable in this entire universe. And it only exists on Arrakis. And there's people that live on Arrakis called Fremen. and House Harkonnen is on Arrakis, currently kind of like ruling them with an iron fist and harvesting and manufacturing and shipping out or whatever this spice. The Emperor decides that I can't say he or she. Well, if it was a she, they probably would have said Empress, but then again, that would give it away. If it was, they would give away the gender. I'm rambling. So the Emperor says, House Harkonnen, get the fuck out. We want I want House Atreides here to help take over the manufacturing of the spice. And from that point on, betrayals ensue, plots twist, and things come to light, and we start to learn about all of the political maneuvering that's happening within this system. So that's pretty much the premise. Leaving out, obviously, there's a ton I'm leaving out, but like, it's what I'm hoping for you guys, if you choose to watch it, is that given that basic premise, you could sit there and watch it, kind of just like learn the different cultural traits, because there's all sorts of like religious kind of stuff going on. You have a little bit of magical kind of stuff going on, and I kind of want that's the kind of stuff that the film needs to tell you organically and not me. I told you the least important shit, but all it does is kind of helps you at least get an idea of what this world is like. So talking about some of the stuff that I love about this film, the visuals and the sound are fucking mind-blowing. Unless you have like a really good TV and a really good sound system, I recommend you see it in theaters. I've watched it twice, and I alluded to this on a Facebook post that I made on my personal page. I said, I watched it twice, and for reasons that I'll divulge when I record my video. And the reason I did that is, because I wanted to get a clear picture of the whole dynamic of these houses and everything that went on. I wanted to go back and watch it again with the knowledge that I had of how all the cultural stuff and how everything is put together here in this universe. I wanted to watch it again with that knowledge and kind of like just see if I picked up anything new, see if things made a little bit more sense since I was less confused, all that kind of stuff. But also, when I did not see it in the theater. I watched it two separate ways, though. I watched it on a really good TV with a really good sound system with a 1080p version, and then I watched it with a not so great version, maybe like 720p on a lesser TV with just the basic, the built-in television speakers, and it makes a world of difference. I'm telling you, like, if you are not watching this on some high level shit, go watch it in the fucking theater, because you're gonna lose so much of what this film gives you by watching it on some sort of lesser device. I'm planning on possibly watching it a third time in theaters just to elevate that experience some more, because it's so mind-blowing in scope, in scale, the sound. If this doesn't win an Oscar for sound, they need to just fucking throw the whole award show away. Like, the ships here are fucking massive. Like, they look like they're big enough to hold an entire planet's population. And the sound conveys that. Like, when these ships move, the sounds that they make, it sounds like something that weighs just a unfathomable amount of weight. It sounds like something that would weigh whatever that is moving. When it lands, the sound of it touching the ground sounds like something of an unfathomable weight landing on the ground. There's even a moment where like a ramp drops down for people to get out, and the ramp makes a sound where when it hits the ground, it's just like, this attention to detail is insane, and it sounds incredible. And to put this in scope, right, think of like a ramp the size of like a 8-lane highway, and then you got like 7 people walking out of it. Like, it's that big in scope, and it's incredible. It's an incredible experience, and it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not just gonna sit here and say, oh, the actors did great or the story is interesting. It's an overall experience, and you lose some of that if you can't properly see these visuals and you can't properly hear this sound, because it's like an entirely it's an aspect of the film that is equally as important as the other aspects, whereas normally you might not think it is. It's always like that, really, in a well-made film, but it's noticeably so in this. So you also have a lot of really cool different designs for things that we are aware of now that have changed during this, I think it's like 10,000 years or something in the future. Like their helicopter designs, they don't have rotating blades on the top. the blades almost kind of function like dragonfly wings, and they kind of flap. And I thought, oh, that's a cool design. But then, like, I wondered if this was like a functional design, because like Arrakis is like a sand slash spice kind of planet, and it made me wonder if you have the blades kind of like in a flapping motion, if it will cause less commotion with the sand. And then also I wonder if it allows you to maneuver better. Like if you just got the rotating one on top, can you only kind of do like wide things and whatnot? But if you got the flapping ones, can you kind of like stop on a dime and turn and go up, like, and do all kinds of different shit? So I wonder, but this movie makes you wonder shit like that. Like what's the function of these flapping these flapping blades, right? So, you know, all that kind of stuff is super cool to watch, super cool to look at. Let's see, what else do I have here? There are some really, really great scenes. There's a really great scene with a truthsayer that comes to visit the main character, Paul. I didn't talk too much about the characters within the houses, but House Atreides is led by Duke Leto Atreides, who's played by Oscar Isaac, and then his son Paul Atreides, who again, I'm not going to tell you much about Paul. But Paul is the main character of the film, essentially. And there's a moment where Paul is kind of tested, and it's a really great scene that's acted really well by Timothee, and it's just super cool. There's some shit you just haven't seen before. And there's another really cool scene where Paul and his mother are on a helicopter, and they're trapped, like they're tied up and shit. They're captured, and how they manage to escape is just really fucking cool. So I'll give you guys that little tidbit as well. And then also, I guess kind of like one of the main villains, I guess, of this first film is the sandworms. And again, like I told you, everything is massive in scope, right? Like I said, the ships look like they could house an entire planet's population. So think of what the size of these sandworms must be. And watching them move, and they do a great job of not showing you too much, but showing you just enough to go, holy shit. And the again, the visuals and the sound of the sandworms moving through the sand, consuming things, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I can't speak highly enough on the visuals and the sound in this film. So let's see. A couple of things that I didn't particularly like about, I don't even want to say I didn't particularly like. These are kind of nitpicky, but they're things that just kind of stuck with me. And the main one here, I think, is, and I think this is probably going to bother a lot of people, keeping in mind that this is a proposed two-part film. It feels like a two-part film. And what I mean by that is, we knew going into, like, say, Avengers Infinity War, that Endgame was going to be the second part. It didn't have a title at the time, but we knew that Infinity War was just the first half of the way they were going to end this phase. But Infinity War exists as its own film and works very well as its own film. You don't necessarily need Avengers Endgame for Infinity War to pay off. Well, I'm not even scratch necessarily. You just don't. Because I'm of the belief that Infinity War is the better film overall. But this feels like a part one. And that's okay too, but the downside of that is that it feels like a part one where they constantly show you all the cool shit that's going to happen in part two. And so what I mean by that is I don't want to spoil too much about Paul, but Paul has visions. And a lot of the visions that Paul has appear to be from the future. And as the movie progresses and you're seeing this runtime increase and the amount of time decrease, and you see how, like, the potential to see what happened in his visions, you realize this shit's not going to happen in this movie. And it's one thing to have a movie that kind of just feels like a first half, just a part of a whole. But it's another thing when you have moments within that and be like, look at this second part's gonna be cool as fuck. Like, it's like, oh man, he's gonna rub it in my face. Then I'm gonna have to wait maybe years before I get to see how the rest of this plays out, or what all these visions are about, how we get there. I see that. I see people could find that frustrating, especially because this movie spends basically the entirety of its runtime world building. Like, it gives you, like I said, all the cool visuals, all the cool sound, all the great acting, all the cool, like, cultural things that you can pick up on and ponder. But at the end of the day, this is all just world building. And it seems like this is going to be the world building film, and the second one is going to be like chock full of like action and shit like that. And that could be disheartening for people, I think. But I feel like the movie brings so much gravitas when it comes to like not just the performances, but just the cinematic feel as a whole. It's so impactful that I feel like it counterbalances the fact that you can kind of tell that this is just the world building. This is just like the building of the foundation, and then the rest of it is the second part is going to be where a lot of the action is going to happen. Speaking of foundation, I found it to be interesting that they have the same kind of body armor that they have in Foundation. It's like a field that surrounds you that's impenetrable. In Foundation, if you strike somebody quickly, it works. But if you slowly do it, you can penetrate the field. And they kind of seem to have the same thing in this, but then they get messy with implementing it. There's times where Jason Momoa's character is fighting, and they show like if you hit him hard and it doesn't penetrate, it flashes blue. If you're actually penetrating the shield and process of penetrating, it turns red. The shield does, and they get messy with that, like where it looks like the shield when Jason Momoa's fighting, it looks like the shield's not even there, and they just let use the blue and red to let you know whether or not he actually made contact. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to his strikes. He's just going fast, and it doesn't even matter. And I thought that was messy. There are prominent characters that we see in the first half of the film that we no longer see in the rest of the film with no explanation for where they went. And when I'm talking about that, I don't mean like they are presumed dead. I mean, if you think about the last time you saw them, maybe you can assume that they're dead. But this isn't a situation where the show tells you, hey, you're supposed to think this person is dead. And then you can go, well, I didn't see the body, so maybe they're still alive. Like Squid Game gives you that, where they tell you for everything that you've seen, you should believe this character is dead. And they do it multiple times, actually. This character is dead. And if you abide by the I didn't see them die, so they may not be dead rule, you will not be fooled by their twists. But this doesn't give you the you are to believe this person is dead but didn't see the body dynamic. You see these characters for the last time, what you don't know is the last time, and then you just never see them again, and they're never talked about again. And that feels again kind of messy. Like I'd like to see, like, okay, at least make me think that this person is dead. Like from context clues and kind of like looking back on it and reading between the lines, I can assume that these characters are dead, but the movie didn't even give me enough there to even go off of. I think this movie could really stand to benefit from maybe like a 3 to 3.5 hour director's cut, which is, it sounds crazy to request something like that, but there's a lot of things where it's like weird edits and moments where it's like, okay, well, how did this character come in possession of this? And it feels like it leaves a lot of shit out to keep that runtime down to 2.5 hours. And that kind of fucked with me a little bit as well. A pro and con, the score. The score is fucking incredible, man. Like Hans Zimmer, again, is this guy. He just knows what the fuck he's doing, man. But on the downside of that, I've noticed that when you're watching now multiple kind of like sci-fi / fantasy properties, you can see that they borrow things from one another, right? Like you have House Harkonnen, and you think of House Stark on Game of Thrones, and like the same dynamic of Game of Thrones. And this movie sometimes does a lot to differentiate itself from Game of Thrones, but then it feels like sometimes it leans into it. And I feel like the score, Hans Zimmer kind of did that. There are times where the score feels very Hans Zimmer, like what you would hear in The Dark Knight, or what you would hear in like Tenet or something like that. But then there are times, there are times where it sounds very Ramin Djawadi, who scores Game of Thrones, particularly in the final scene of this movie, which is a long scene. But the music that plays through that feels very Game of Thrones. And I'd rather notice something like, oh, they have House whatever too, than to feel like they're almost kind of leaning into the Game of Thrones stuff. And like I said, this is very, very nitpicky. And again, this is, some of the stuff like House Harkonnen and all that is based, the movie's based on a book. So, and the book came out in like 1965. So I can't say Game of Thrones is taking I can't say this is, taking Game of Thrones shit. The book came first. But what I can say is that it feels like the score really leans in sometimes into the Ramin Djawadi Game of Thrones kind of vibe. And I don't know. I'd rather notice things that feel Game of Thrones and almost kind of feel like they're leaning into it and making me think that. I think that's all I had as far as pros and cons. I think I've covered pretty much everything that I want to cover based on what I'm seeing in my notes. So I'm just going to close with a couple of thoughts. One of them I already mentioned, which I said I feel like it's interesting how you can see that these properties kind of borrow from one another. I already mentioned the other thing too, the body shields being unclear. And then the last thing is that Jason Momoa fights like Khal Drogo in every fucking thing he's in. He plays the same fucking character, man. Just different clothes and different words come out of his mouth. But when he starts not even when he starts fighting, like he plays a badass and everything. And then when he starts fighting, he fights exactly the same way. Like it's Khal Drogo, it's Aquaman, it's Duncan Idaho. They all fight exactly the fucking same. But that's just a fun little thing. So wrapping up, again, I nitpicked a couple of cons, but by and large, I fucking love this movie. I urge you to see it either in theaters or on a high-level TV with a great sound system so that you are not deprived of the experience of the film. It's not just about the acting. It's not just about the plot. It's not just about, the lighting or any of those things. Like the visuals and the sound are incredibly important to this experience. So I implore you to do that. Otherwise, that's all I got. Let me know what you thought of the movie in the comments. Let me know what you thought of the movie compared to the original David Lynch version. Let me know what you think. No, don't let me know what you think is going to happen, because that's an internet thing where people are like, I think yada 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 is going to happen, but it's based on a book, so you know what the fuck's going to happen. So don't fucking tell me what you think is going to happen. Like it's what you know is going to happen. Spare me that. But let me know what you thought in the comments. Again, incredible movie. Highly recommend. I'm putting this in my strongest recommendations playlist, and I will see you guys on Friday for Foundation episode 6. Peace.